Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Caitlin Cadella-Lowe. I'm Vice President of Policy and Programs here at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and I am honored to lead our early childhood education, K-12, and career readiness portfolios. And I'm also honored to be joined on stage today by Barb Denherter, who's the President and CEO of the Sioux Center Chamber of Commerce in Sioux Center, Iowa. The Chamber is the largest business organization in Sioux Center and is working to create an excellent business, industrial, and residential community for today and generations to come. Thanks so much for joining us, Barb. And Bill Tucker, who is Program Advisor for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Education Pathways Program, which supports students in their transition from high school to college, career, and beyond, with a particular focus on Black and Latino students, as well as students experiencing poverty. So by way of brief introductions, I'd like to just ask our panelists to shed a little bit of light on the particular area of education and workforce development that is your primary concern. Why do you care? And what should everyone in the room know? How about we start with you, Barb?
First of all, I'm incredibly honored to be on this panel today with such talented people. I am coming to you, as Caitlin said, from rural Iowa. We are an ag-based community of about 8,000 people, and we too have a talent problem. We have industry that wants to grow and not enough workforce to fill it. Our population has grown by about 16%. Our retail sales have grown by 75% in the last 10 years. So we've seen some great growth, but we don't have enough people to fill jobs. So that is part of my passion. But I'm going to talk about how my personal story with that is I started with the local Chamber of Commerce 10 years ago. And I had lived in our community my entire life. And within my first 6 weeks of my job, I was given the opportunity to tour all the different businesses and industries in our community. And I graduated high school in 1991, so now you know how old I am. But I was blown away by all the misperceptions and misconceptions I had about what today's workforce looks like. I didn't know that employers upskilled their employees. I had no idea that manufacturing had robots now. I didn't know that there was biotechnology happening. So I became passionate about saying, how do we tell these businesses stories to other people? And my other personal passion for this is at that same time, I had a high school freshman. And as a freshman, he was asked to make some decisions about his career path that neither he nor we as parents were equipped to make in any sort of situation. So we decided at that point that our Sioux Center Chamber of Commerce would be the leading driver in working with that talent and workforce development.
Great. I also want to note that we were also joined by Sally McCready, who's the president and chair of the PNC Foundation, and she'll be sharing lessons and outcomes from a powerful pre-kindergarten focused program called PNC Grow Up Great, which happens to be celebrating its 20th anniversary. So Sally, thanks again for joining us. Just mention that we are sort of going through some brief introductions and asking the panelists to shed a little bit of light of why you're here today. So Bill, we'll go to you and then we'll go to Sally.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. Really excited to be on this panel. At the Gates Foundation in the United States, our primary focus is on education. And we work all the way from early learning through K-12, through post-secondary education. And one of the things we've learned is the importance of transitions. The first day of kindergarten, transitioning into formal schooling. The promotion from 8th grade to 9th grade. These are just really critical moments and times when students are more vulnerable because they're in between. They're kind of caught in between. And it's a time when we know we really have to focus because they could get off track. The transition that I focus on in our work, what we call our education pathways work, is that transition that you mentioned from high school onto a student's post-secondary pathway. We like to say kind of grades 10 through 14. And this is the time when students are making incredibly consequential decisions You referenced sort of your high school freshman. Wait, I'm being asked all these things and no one's prepared me or exposed me to the options, and I'm being asked to decide. Students are the decisions they're making as 17, 18-year-olds. They're making the biggest financial decision that they might make in decades. They're deciding which type of career they might pursue. They're making all of these decisions often without any guidance or without any support. And oftentimes the decisions are not, they're not choosing from a bunch of awesome decisions. They might have really tough decisions. Do I either go to work to support my family, or do I go to get further education and do something I dream of? So in our work, we're really trying to do two things. One, we're trying to support our schools, our communities, to provide more guidance, support, information, relationships to help students navigate these decisions. And then on the other side, decisions that are often really hard, and our systems are often dysfunctional across this transition. Sometimes our K-12 systems and our post-secondary systems are not well connected, and oftentimes neither is well connected to what students might need when they go to work. So then the second part, in addition to trying to ensure that students have the right supports, it's how do we create systems that work better together? How can we make these transitions less difficult to navigate, more seamless, and so that students can really see their pathways in front of them and have really good options and choices?
Thanks. Sally?
Sure, thank you. Again, also very happy to be here today, and I'm really excited to talk a little bit about PNC Grow Up Great, which is kind of on the other spectrum of the side Bill was talking about in terms of transitions from school to work. But really, PNC Grow Up Great is focused on high quality early childhood education. And as Caitlin mentioned, we started the program actually in 2004, so we're just getting ready to start our 20th anniversary celebration next year. And we came to the program not because we were necessarily looking to start an education or a workforce development program, but really what we wanted to do 20 years ago was better focus our philanthropy and really think if we were all working together around one cause, wouldn't it be amazing to see the difference we could make? So to decide what issue to focus on, we asked our employees, and our employees said, if we're going to focus in this way, we'd really like to focus somewhere in the area of children and education. And as we all know, that's a huge realm of opportunities and possibilities. But the more research we did about early childhood education and the absolutely amazing trajectory, positive trajectory it has on a child's lifetime outcomes, the more we became convinced that was the place for us to focus. It makes a ton of sense for us as a bank because it is a very important workforce and economic development tool. And so we've really focused that. It's become a $500 million program. It's a bilingual program, and we believe very strongly that we have to think of all the resources we have at PNC to bring to bear against this issue. So we have a grants program, as you might imagine, an employee volunteerism program, an advocacy program, and an awareness program, and have been really working to improve access to high-quality education for the last 20 years.
So Sally, let's stay on that. What are you seeing through PNC Grow Up Great program in terms of how effective early childhood education paves a smoother path for youth as they grow up? And what outcomes have you seen over the last 20 years? Do you believe that PNC's Grow Up Great program is the start to the talent pipeline?
Sure. So taking the first part of that question first, how does it smooth a pathway for children's future success? There's so much research that talks about the impacts of access to high-quality early childhood education. So we know that children, especially children from lower-income backgrounds that have access to high-quality early education, are more likely to less likely to repeat a grade. They're more likely to graduate from high school, go on to college. Studies showed later in life they'll more likely own their own home, have a savings account. And in fact, economist James Heckman from the University of Chicago, who's a Nobel Prize-winning economist, has talked about that the return for every $1 invested in high-quality early childhood education, society saves up to $13 in the long term. And again, these are savings because of less grade repetition, less use of the criminal justice system, less use of the social welfare benefit system. So really an amazing return on investment. And I can promise you, if you work for a bank and you talk about a 13% return on investment, bankers' eyes light up, and it makes a ton of sense for us and a ton of sense for us to advocate for this issue. But after 20 years, it's amazing to think that even with all of this research, we're still not making the investments that we should be as a country in high quality early education and high quality early care. So just to give one example that I know we're all very familiar with, the nation's facing a huge childcare crisis. Its Ready Nation released a report this February that talked about it's $122 billion loss to our economy each year because of the lack of childcare, and this is because of lack of wages, loss in tax revenue, loss in earning power, and yet we still aren't making these investments. So we know at PNC it's crucial to continue to advocate. It's crucial to continue to talk about the importance of these investments.
Bill, when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, you talked about the education career sort of being a siloed challenge, right? And one of the areas that you have spent some time focusing on is supporting students through the entire process, trying to break free of these silos and allowing them to be exposed to opportunity for their futures, and actually chasing and securing these opportunities through jobs and work-based learning experiences. Can you elaborate on what that looks like from the perspective of the foundation?
Yeah, sure. I'm really glad that you asked, because all too often we find that people want to have college or post-secondary education be opposed to careers. You either go down this track or you go down that track. Mm-hmm. And in high schools, we might set up, there's college advising over here, and there's CTE, or career and technical education, over here. And what we see is that they go together. It should be an and rather than an or. Almost everyone who goes to college or to get a post-secondary education wants to have a good job and have a great career. And likewise, we see that the vast majority of good jobs in this country, and that number is increasing, require some form of post-secondary education, certification, and training. So to think about these as opposites is really just leading us down the wrong direction. We want to think about what that might look like. That means that we're broadly exposing students to the different types of careers that might be available in their communities and in our country as early as middle school. That we are connecting, and we're giving them career-connected learning opportunities. So it's not just exposure, but they're having the opportunity to see the relevance in their classes, and ideally have internships and externships and all sorts of opportunities to really see what it's like. And then we're helping them connect those opportunities and those things that they want to do or they're excited about, and helping them to see the relevance on how their education pathway connects with those career opportunities. And what we learned from the research is that students who have that sense of purpose and relevance, they do better in their education. Not surprising, right? When we take on something and it's hard, and it's almost always hard, you're going to run into barriers. If you know why you're doing it and you're really committed to it, you're going to overcome those barriers. So there's a lot of ways in which, the final one I'll mention, we'll say more about kind of how we might structure these types of things, is really integrating in your kind of course pathways. We're seeing a lot of communities that are thinking about the courses that students take in high school. They're integrating them with dual credit or dual enrollment from a community college or institute of higher education. And they're constructing them so that they are not just random courses. Well, I took a bunch of courses, but they can be construed onto pathways. So if you're in the Central Valley in California, there might be an agricultural tech pathway that you take. And students have options on these pathways. And again, they can see how these courses come together, not academic over here and career technical over here, but really integrated, and not making you stay on, not lining you up into you have to go this way, but really offering you a pathway. Oh, this is what it would be like, and I've already accelerated half the way, and I could see how I could get to this really good job or this really good career. So putting them together is just a much better way to think about it, and it actually serves both purposes. It helps with educational attainment and helps students really find those passions and connect.
Yeah. This is a great transition to the next question for Barb, which your chamber, Sioux City, has actually multiple programs that you've been running in this portfolio. One is your teachers program, where educators learn from employers on what knowledge, skills, and abilities they need for the jobs of tomorrow. And they bring that back to classrooms, right? The next is Your Future at Work, which is a program that exposes high school students to real local industries and employers, and talks about their futures. And then the next, which is a really innovative one, is your Homecoming Grant, which brings young professionals back to Sioux Center to live, to work, and to play at home if they ventured somewhere else. So bring us inside these three different programs, and what's the experience that your teachers and your students and your employers and your parents are getting, and what's the feedback that you're getting from stakeholders as a result of these three programs?
Sure, she already did a great job explaining them a little bit. I'm going to start with the Your Future at Work program. That was one of the first programs that we generated or started when I started my career with the chamber. School administrators came to me and said, there's something backwards with career fairs. I feel like students are getting talked to, they're being told about the business, not getting hands-on experience about the industry. And they weren't finding their passions, as Bill talked about. So what we created was an event at that time which was unique, and now they're happening all over the nation, which is awesome. But students actually get to choose what type of sessions they want to go to. So we have businesses who sign up who will participate in this event. But the businesses are instructed clearly to not talk about your business per se or your benefits, but to talk about your industry, to give students something hands-on to work on. 20 minutes is all they get. And we want students to leave that session wanting to know more about that industry, or maybe they learned we don't want to do that industry. And we find out, this is geared towards high school sophomores, that a lot of high school sophomores think engineering is about driving a train. So when they go to the engineering session and find out it's not about driving a train, and we also learn through this that our businesses speak in words that our students don't understand. So they're speaking in their vernacular, and so we do actually a train the trainer with this to encourage businesses to bring their conversation down to a level of a 16-year-old. And that has really been profound. And then the other great takeaway from that is we have over 900 students now out of our county that attend this each year. We have 3 different post-secondary institutions, 2 four-year colleges and a community college. They take turns hosting these 900 students. So it's a win for those those institutions as well, to show students what is happening and where they could potentially see themselves in their future. So after that event started to happen, I was hearing that students would go to their teachers and say, hey, I heard about Pella Windows Corporation. I want to work there. They manufacture windows. And the teacher would be like, oh, you're too smart to work in manufacturing. And I'm like, oh, we have a problem. And again, a lot of these teachers don't know what they don't know. They've been teaching their whole life, and so they haven't had the opportunity to step foot into our local businesses and to see what's actually happening. And many of these teachers are my friends, and I would hear what they were saying. I'm like, they just don't know. They don't know about the current work environments, what some of these skills are that these students need. So we developed a program called Classroom to Career. And what this program is, the number one key to success of this program is we ask these teachers to come during a ready scheduled professional development time. So they don't have to take anything out of their school day. It's a ready time where it's scheduled for professional development. They go into different industries in our community. The industries cater their tour based on the Iowa Core employability skills. So those skills could be anything from working through conflict, problem solving, tenacity. So they'll do their tours showing how those skills are used within their workforce. I could go into a lot of detail, but we don't have time for that. But one great example is, I'm going to talk about Pella Corporation again, which is a window manufacturer. Our teachers saw that there was this board up in their workplace, and they're like, what's that for? And they're like, well, when our team members complain about something or want to see change, we say to them, okay, you guys come up with a change, and whoever has the best solution to that problem that the employees see gets a prize. And teachers say, well, how often don't our students complain about what's happening in the school? So now they've implemented in some of these classrooms, if there's something you don't like, great, come up with a solution. And what a great workforce skill for these students to have. And then the last one you referenced was the Homecoming Grant. And a lot of local chambers of commerce will give high school scholarships to students who are going off to college, and that did not sit right with our team and our board. And we're like, instead, let's invest in people who want to come back, because we find that people who grew up in our area or within a 100-mile radius like to come back, and they end up being employees that we can retain for a long time. So what we do with that is, if you grew up in our part of the country, we have some parameters on that, and you accept a job back in our area, you can apply for a $6,000 loan forgiveness. It's called our Homecoming Grant, and we pay that over a 4-year period to help with retention. And then our employers also use that as a recruitment tool.
So this question's for Barb and Sally. We know that there is no lack of interest between the business community and educators in terms of wanting to tackle some of these big challenges together. Yet, two totally different cultures, different ways of operating. I think you just hit on this, that we sort of talk about things differently, right? And collaboration can be hard, it can be slow, especially when you're talking about enormous issues like early childhood education, enormous issues like K-12, enormous issues like career readiness. What are some ways that your programs are breaking down the silos and encouraging partnerships between sectors? Sally, let's start with you.
Sure. So I was thinking about this, and the best example that I could kind of go through in my head over the last 20 years with Grow Up Great, and it was actually one from the very beginning of the program. As I mentioned, one of the elements of the Grow Up Great program is we have an employee volunteerism component, and we all get 40 hours of paid time off each year to volunteer either for Grow Up Great or also some of the racial and social justice work that we do. So when we started our volunteerism program, our main partner with our volunteerism program is Head Start. And so, as you mentioned, there's definitely some different in cultures between a large bank and an early education program, a government-run program. So we thought we were, really slick at the beginning. We had built a volunteerism application. We had worked with the Head Start state collaborators in each one of our states. We had built a website where centers could go on and apply to be a volunteer center. They could post volunteer opportunities. We talked on a lot of their meetings about who we are and what we were going to do. We had researched all the clearances that you need to be able to go into an early childhood setting, and made it free and hopefully turnkey for our employees to get those clearances. And we launched the program, and we were so excited to see the volunteer opportunities come rolling in. Absolute crickets. We really didn't hear anything. And while we felt we had done some relationship building, we clearly hadn't done enough, and enough at the local level and with each program. And it became clear to us that we really needed to get to know each program, introduce ourselves, be very hands-on, walk them through the application, walk them through the portal, help them with anything they needed to do. And really also to think really broadly with them about all the different ways that employees at PNC might be able to support their early childhood education program. You can definitely see teachers needing an extra set of hands in the classroom, but I think there wasn't a broader understanding of we have great IT professionals, we have an amazing HR team. It goes on and on and on. So over time, we now have partners that we've worked with and volunteered with for 20 years. We can earn grants for those partners. And so we've seen really the program go from thinking very singularly about, yes, we can come do your landscaping or things like that, to now we have a Skillshare program where we work with programs intensely for 16 weeks. We've redeveloped all their job positions through our HR team. We've had programs ask us to really support their marketing efforts and build a whole marketing program that has then in turn expanded access, really filled the seats that they had to fill within their program. And we've also done some amazing IT work for programs, helping them bring students in and really help them with their whole record system, their customer relationship management system. So we've really learned over the years the importance of not only a long-term partnership, but really building that partnership from scratch and understanding that at the heart, our partners are early educators, and their primary responsibility is taking care of children. And until that is happening, and they're doing that very well, only then will they have time to think about how we might be able to supplement and help their program. So it's been a great journey, and we have wonderful partners after 20 years.
Great. Barb?
I heard a statistic probably 5 years ago that 90% of educators thought they were educating students to meet the needs of the workforce, and 90% of businesses said the people they were hiring did not have the skills they needed. So wow, that disconnect is huge. So building that bridge is really important. I think the win that we have is that both businesses and educators do want to play together. It's just their sandboxes are really, really different. So I think the first thing that I've noticed that works really well, like Sally talked about, is starting the dialogue, getting the right people at the table, getting the right leaders, getting your business leaders, getting your education leaders at the right table so they can start talking about what's missing with who we're hiring and why do educators not know what's needed in the workforce. So just talk about those things. I think that's really important. But I think the second, well, this is probably the most important thing, is to step into each other's cultures. I don't know that businesses understand some of the limitations our educators have with time and resources. They are feeling pulled with the way things have always been done to getting challenged to change things and how to do that. So I think that's a really big win for businesses to step in and say, like you talked about, how can we partner? How can we help our educators do the things we need to do? And educators need to hear and step into the business cultures to see what things are really like and how they could maybe simply tweak some of the things they're doing in the classroom to successfully equip their students to meet those needs. And I think, I'm sure all of you have this, but in your community, have that person who can be that convener between business and education, who can continue that dialogue when there's frustrations, when I've had a business community like, I'm trying to get this CTE program up and running, and the school's moving too slow. This should have been done 6 months ago. And I'm like, yep, you guys move at different paces. And just to be that person who can kind of mediate some of those conversations.
Just a plug there for a chamber as such an important connectivity, right? That connective tissue to where the business community is, where the struggles are, and the school system, if it be the school system or sort of the other partners where they are bringing them together at that one table is such an important role that I think chambers across the country have played and continue to play, and a great example of that sitting right here. Bill, love to bring you into this and get sort of your take at a macro level here, which is you spend a lot of time implementing programs through your role at the Gates Foundation. I'd love, just to hear your take on what a great example of a program is. What does a good program look like? Share with us when you look at something and say, oh, I'm so happy we invested in that because.
Yeah, what a great question, what a fun question. Well, first, I want to take that at maybe two different levels. I want to build off of what both Sally and Barb said, because when we have worked with communities and regions, great looks like bridging these gaps. And it's not just between business and education. Oftentimes it's within education, the K-12 system and the higher ed system, or multiple systems, school districts and systems. So there's an organization playing that role and fulfilling all of the functions that you mentioned. We've learned that it can be a chamber. In Phoenix, the Phoenix Chamber convened all sorts of business groups and industry groups, and together with their education have really moved forward on developing advanced manufacturing pathways that prepare students, and they know that they're preparing students in the ways that are going to set those students up to have really valuable opportunities. So it could be a chamber. We've learned it could be a community college that plays that role. Oftentimes it might be a nonprofit organization that's really leading collective action efforts within a community. So we've seen that to be a really key element. And part of one of the things that we've been looking at is how do we move from kind of one-off programs. Maybe we live in a metropolitan region that has 50,000 high school students, and we're so proud of this program, but it only serves 100 of them. And the 100 who are already just had great grades and were the high flyers and are involved in everything. So one of the things when we think about good, it's how do we take things that are good, that have these elements that I mentioned, the really strong advising and supports, the career-connected learning opportunities, the ways in which high school and college are seamlessly entered together to allow students to accelerate on their pathway. And then that final thing is, how do we make it such that these things are available for many, many more students at all different academic achievement levels and in all communities, and that students see themselves invited. It's not a competition or only this small group or this, we've got a program here and a program here, but we're really thinking comprehensively about how do we integrate these opportunities. And that is where you do need these sectors coming together, because if you're going to do something at scale, it's really hard. So we see some examples I mentioned in Phoenix. We're really excited about this work in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Early College Alliance. They're building off of some really strong, what they call early college high schools, which integrate college. You can earn up to an associate's degree. They've got a number of high schools like that, but it was really hard for that program to spread to their kind of traditional high schools. And so what they've been able to do is figure out, great, how do we take elements of that piece and say it's not just in this special high school for a certain number of students, but how can we take elements of that experience and make it so that it's available in all of our high schools? And so they're doing that work, which is really exciting in this, and it's still in pilot stage, but it's amazing that the students can accelerate. They can essentially work through, so they're finishing a year of college in high school, and that's connected to a pathway which connects to a good job, and the state has done it so that 13th year where they continue an extra year, they've graduated from high school, they're not retained in high school, but they're able to get that first degree, that associate's degree, that career-connected degree within 1 year after high school at no additional cost. Now, if they want to go off and get a good job, they can do that, or they can go on if they want to go on and get their 4-year degree. So it's exciting to see when these things can come together, not just those various components, but thinking about how we do them at some level of scale so that the opportunities are widely spread.
So let's think a little bit about the future. And I'm thinking, what's keeping everyone up at night? I laugh when I say that, because if you were asking me, I would say my 1-year-old, because she just won't sleep. But I want to know, what's on your wish list that, perhaps we are in a room, right, of a conference titled Business Solves, and there is business here, there are nonprofits, there are academics, really spans the attendee list. Maybe there's someone here that might be able to help solve that. So what's keeping you up at night? What's on your wish list? And maybe we can find somebody in the room that might be able to help us think through this. Sally, we'll start with you and we'll go down the line.
So in terms of early childhood, there are so many things to think about keeping you up at night. Teacher pay, so many repercussions from the pandemic that I think we're just beginning to understand. But I think I maybe go back to what Bill said at the beginning and the importance of transitions and collaboration, and just thinking about the people in this room. Perhaps you're working on different spaces in the education realm, in K through 12 or higher education, but if you're thinking about higher education, also thinking about where early care and education or childcare may fit into that. So a huge issue for college students that might be young parents or non-traditional students is, what do you do about childcare while you're attending classes? So we've been working with some local universities in Pittsburgh to really help to think about what the solutions are for their students, their non-traditional students. So I think when you think about education broadly, there's a piece there that's really important with higher education, certainly a piece with K through 12. There's really not a good transition program at all from pre-K to K. Kindergarten teachers, you'll get these children, their pre-K teachers or early education teachers have a wealth of knowledge about them, how to best work with them, how these children thrive, but that knowledge isn't being transferred. And then the other huge opportunity, I'm sure many of us are working on affordable housing, but affordable housing solutions only work if there are childcare solutions that are there for those that are using the affordable housing. So I think we tend to think in silos and certainly understand that when we have our focus areas, but a lot of times our focus areas fit so nicely, and if you're not thinking about the whole person that may be using different systems and all of their needs, you might not be coming up with the best solution for them or with them.
Yeah, I'd love to just see a raise of hands on who's thinking about childcare or early education as a piece of the problems that you're trying to solve for. I know it's something that one thing that we say all the time is childcare is a workforce issue. You cannot solve for workforce unless you are thinking about childcare. And I think it resonated prior to the pandemic, but in the midst of the pandemic and now, sort of in the aftermath of, it has been something that has just met with a constant nod in that childcare is sort of becoming part of the talent pipeline conversation in a meaningful way. And I think, now is the time. Credit to PNC for talking about this for 20 years. And now I think, we are all sort of coming into that place to talk about it in that same regard. Bill?
I love that you all have stuck with this for so long. That's so important.
Yeah.
So just credit to you for that. One thing that keeps me up at night is this discussion in our country, and particularly among young people, about, is college worth it? Is further education worth it? And I understand it, whether it's debt or question about the relevance of what they're doing. We said, let's ask young people, let's ask students about this. And so we've done a whole series of surveys, and we recently did a series of focus groups with students who had, who were just entering into higher education, focus groups of students who had graduated from high school but had not gone on to further education, all sorts of different types. And just one thing, sometimes when you do a focus group, there's something that really sticks out. And it wasn't just one student, it was one student who said this, and then everyone nodded. And the student said, college is the slow lane. I can go on and I can learn this thing from YouTube or wherever. Why am I going to spend 4 years? Right? This is the slow lane. And, I took that as a challenge to say that wasn't, that's interesting perspective. That's a challenge for us in our education systems, that we really need to make sure that the value of education and training is really clear and really relevant. Cost is obviously a huge issue, but cost is part of value. And making sure that what students are experiencing is something that feels like and that they understand is for them and is really going to further them. And that probably means we need to continue all of the traditional things that we've done and make sure we provide more access and supports, and we need some different ways to configure things. Because I don't think we want to say that education in our country is the slow lane, the laggard. We want to make sure that feels like it's relevant and exciting and connected. So that is something that's keeping me up at night, but I'm really optimistic as I look across the country and see people designing different ways for students to get to the same goal, that we're going to do it. But we got to solve that problem.
Yeah. Quick show of hands on bills keeping them up at night. I think you're in good company, Bill.
We're all going to be like sleepless tonight.
I feel like, you're right. I felt like maybe we should limit this to just one piece of the pie.
As we look to educating people about what's available in the workforce, I see great programs educating teachers. I see great programs educating students. I don't find a whole lot of great programs out there that are educating parents who are getting them really engaged in the process. And I also see an opportunity for us to really engage with our post-secondary students who might be in our community. Our county graduates about 1,500 students a year, and I don't think we're doing a very good job of telling them the Sioux County, Iowa story before they leave. And how can we I think there's just many of us, if we have post-secondary institutions in our area, how do we capture them? How do we tell our story to them so that they may have done internships where or they maybe had opportunities to get to know a business in your community, but how can we do that better? But I think the number one thing that's keeping me up at night is what Sally's focusing on, and I think especially those third shift parents who are working third shift, who I know those children are left home alone. And we've had some scary stories from our own community, and those are littlest of little, and those things hurt my heart really bad, and I don't know how to fix that.
Let's quickly move into advocacy here, which, it moves beyond programming, and it talks about sort of how are you thinking about the role that advocacy plays as a piece of the program that you guys are working on? We'll go quickly on this one because we're running out of time. Sally, and we'll go down the...
Sure. We thought that advocacy had to be part and parcel of the Grow Up Great program from day one, because we know that our dollars are just a drop in the bucket in terms of what this country needs for everybody to have access to high quality early childhood education and care. So we've, since day one, we have 54 regional presidents across our markets. Each one of them has become knowledgeable on the topic. We find that people tend to listen to us a little bit differently because we're a non-traditional advocate for early childhood education. And to your point, Caitlin, we can talk about it as a workforce development tool and an economic development tool. So we put a lot of time and resources into advocacy because we know that's one of the most valuable voices that we have.
I'll just quickly add, if we're talking about education, it's a mostly public system, or at least publicly funded in most aspects. And so that means that any of our philanthropic work or business work is a small component. So we have to tell stories. We think a lot about how can we support partners to really have strong examples, to be able to share data, to be able to share results, so that it can really inform what happens from a public sector standpoint.
And just echo what Bill just said, I think to get businesses involved with education, because their resources are limited, there's a lot of grants out there, but for businesses to see they've got the power, they have the innovation, they actually have the greatest incentive to help with that pathway.
So just to close out, last question. As we mentioned, we're sitting in a room in a conference called Business Solves. So what is one thing you want the audience of Business Solves to be thinking about as they leave today? Barb, we'll switch it up. We'll start with you and we'll go the other way.
So almost exactly what I said. I think businesses have the most to gain, the most skin in the game in this situation and this issue. So get into the classroom, work with your local, I got to put a plug for Chambers of Commerce, but work with them. In a culture where things are incredibly divisive, chambers are still seen as someone who likes to play nice and as a safe entity who's working for all sides.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that too. I would say if you're with a business or an employer, like you have to get engaged because, and I think that engagement can take a lot of different forms. It can take the form of supporting whoever your local intermediary is, who's helping to bridge these connections. So you don't have to do it all on your own. It can take the form of offering career-connected learning opportunities, everything from the types of 20-minute sessions you described to internships to all sorts of opportunities. It can take the form of helping your local community college design the programs to ensure that they're going to prepare students for industry. But I think our education system won't work the way it could or should unless we really have businesses and employers engaged. And so we need that.
I'll probably just take a cue from the last panel, which is just really thinking about how we in this room can collaborate and work together and put our resources together to come up with innovative solutions that will benefit our communities.
One thing I will say is there is no shortage of conversations that happen every single day about solving a workforce challenge. And that makes a lot of sense because it's right here and it's right now and it needs a solution. But you cannot come to find that solution if we don't think about the role that early childhood education and K-12 play in this ecosystem. So if you're thinking about how do you solve for workforce, please think about who are you having conversations with in your K-12 system and in your early childhood education system to better understand what the challenges are and better figure out who your partners are. And with that, please join me in thanking this awesome panel for being up here.